Hi, welcome to my physiotherapy video site. I'm your host, Brett Wade. The videos contained in this site are for general interest and not meant to replace medical advice or related treatments. Always speak with your family doctor or licensed healthcare practitioner prior to starting any exercise or intervention.
Most people are aware of the use of the word core as it applies to the abdominals. It is, in fact, de rigueur in the fitness and rehabilitation industry to teach people how to engage or how to contract their core muscles in the abdominal area. Many people are familiar with muscles such as transversus abdominis, for example. As a physiotherapist, I commonly teach core exercises for people with low back pain or neck pain resulting from injuries like falls, sports injuries, whiplash. As injuries in the neck and the low back are exceedingly common, I have produced some YouTube videos for my patients and for the general public to help people learn how to engage the core muscles of their neck. In fact, in a video, Core of the Neck, I discussed how similar or how much in common the core muscles of the neck have with the core muscles of the low back. One thing they have in common is that they're very small muscles, generally speaking, that when activated or contracted in an isometric fashion, meaning no movement at the joints, this is very helpful for teaching people how to contract it in this fashion, these small intrinsic muscles. It helps people function with less pain. And in fact, even people without pain, it may improve their performance in things like sports where power is incredibly important, particularly power that gets generated from the spine. That translates to more force that can be developed in the extremities, such as the arms or legs. The rotator cuff muscles of the shoulder are also small intrinsic muscles. And these muscles are commonly weak and can contribute to shoulder problems for causing things like rotator cuff tendonitis, for example. Other areas where there are small intrinsic muscles, which physiotherapists are starting to pay more attention to in helping people learn about their anatomy, but also how to contract these muscles, are in the hands, the hip, and the foot. This video is going to show you why paying attention to the core muscles of your foot can help you if you have chronic foot problems like plantar fasciitis and stress fractures or Morton neuromas, but also teach you how having a stronger foot core can help with rehabilitation for injuries like shin splints, hip and knee problems further up the chain. If you don't have a strong foot core, excessive or abnormal movements in the foot just get translated all the way up to the hips and the knees. Since your foot is the first thing, and unless you're sitting, crawling, or lying down, it is the only part of your body which really interacts with the ground. As we're going to see, there are 4 layers of muscles on the bottom of your foot. A lot of people don't realize that. And these muscles do many amazing things like spreading your toes, for example, flexing your toes, bringing your toes back together. And learning to control these muscles is really crucial for anyone, especially runners, hikers, walkers, or people who have injuries. So if you're ready, let's jump right in. So as I mentioned, there are 4 layers of muscle on the bottom of your feet. For the purpose of this video, it's not necessary to do a really deep dive into the anatomy of naming the muscles and knowing their innervation, for example, of each of these small intrinsic muscles. But the thing to understand really is their function, or what these 4 layers of muscles can do. And these numerous small intrinsic muscles on the bottom of your feet have a lot of different functions. For starters, you may not know this, but you actually have one muscle which moves your big toe away from the other 4 toes. You also have a muscle which moves it back towards the other 4 toes. You have a muscle which flexes your big toe, and you also have a muscle which does the same to your pinky toe, moving it away from the other 4 toes, bringing it back towards the other 4 toes, and flexing that pinky toe. You also have several muscles in those layers which can contract or flex your toe muscles, spread them apart, and bring them all back together. If you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I don't think I can even separate any of the movement from my big toe from the other 4 toes, well, you're not alone. A lot of people don't have the ability to separate those movements, let alone abduct or spread their toes. Most of my patients had no idea there were even those 4 layers of muscles or what their actions did in their foot. So learning how to do this is part of a neurological awakening of those muscles. And by learning how to, again, contract them effectively, we can help ourselves with injury prevention and performance, increasing our performance. The closest most people, in fact, get to spreading their toes is perhaps when they wear toe spreaders after perhaps a pedicure. Most of us have become so accustomed to cramming our feet into our fancy pointy shoes or wearing overly supportive and overly cushioned shoes that the core of our muscles, those 4 layers of muscles, have in fact weakened to the point where we really have lost neurologically that ability to control their movements. And since we rarely exercise the muscles of our feet, those tendons of those small 4 intrinsic muscles, well, they've adaptively shortened. And in fact, probably our joints have even got quite tight. Well, that's the bad news. The good news is that you can get it all back. You can relearn how to control the movements of your toes and your arch. Remember, the whole purpose of relearning how to use these small 4 intrinsic muscles, 4 layers of intrinsic muscles in the bottom of your foot, is to help you deal with chronic injuries of your foot, knee, and all the way up to the hip. I've helped many runners and other athletes recover from chronic, repetitive lower body injuries like shin splints or IT band pain by simply improving how they recruit the core muscles of their foot. Once you decide that you want to start working on the core muscles of your foot with the exercises I'm about to show you, you're going to want to start considering your footwear. While your job may require specific footwear like closed-toe shoes or steel-toe boots or dress shoes, when and as often as you can, you should consider going barefoot or wearing something that allows your toes to be able to move and spread apart, maybe even something like a Birkenstock sandal, for example. At least once a week when I'm working at my computer, if I'm at home, or it's appropriate for me to take off my shoes and socks, I'll use toe spreaders. And they work really well to help improve the mobility of my feet. I also like to wear my favorite 5-toe shoes. And when I'm running out on a treadmill or even outdoors, I like to wear my Ultra Torin running shoes. They have a very wide toe box and once again allow my toes to really spread and be quite active when I'm running. These shoes are also zero drop, which essentially means that they don't have a high arch, which would put a high heel, which would put my foot in a very abnormal position. I'm by no means an expert when it comes to running biomechanics, but since working on my foot strength and relearning how to run by landing more on the ball of my foot than allowing my heel to come down using these zero drop shoes, also doing these exercises I'm about to show you, I've become a stronger, more efficient runner, and I've rehabilitated some of my old injuries like hip injuries and knee injuries. I've even noticed that I'm seemingly getting fewer injuries as I increase my mileage with running. To learn more about specific running biomechanics as they relate to improving the strength of your core, the core of your foot, I recommend checking out Eric Orton, ericorton.com, his website. There's a lot of great information out there that he has on running biomechanics. He, by the way, is the coach for Christopher McDougall, who wrote the really seminal book, the best-selling book, Born to Run. I highly recommend that book. Check it out. Okay, we're about to get into how I do my core foot workout, but I want to give you a sense of how I work core foot exercises into my weekly routine. I will tell you that it's a bit like me putting core neck or core trunk exercises into my routine. I have it in there really all the time, but I do dedicate at least one day a week specifically to my core foot exercises, incorporating the principles also then into my entire strength program for the rest of the week. The rest of the week, I'm doing other exercises for my hips and knees, as well as I do cardiovascular exercise 7 days a week, which for me is triathlon training, so swimming, biking, and running. So here's an example of a typical week for me at this point in my winter, which is winter here now, my winter training schedule. With all of my strength exercise, whether that's upper body or lower body, I'm either doing them with my toe spreaders, barefoot, or wearing my, again, 5-toe Vibram shoes. On the days when I'm doing specifically the core foot exercises and yoga, I'm in barefoot. You can see that on Mondays and Fridays, in addition to my cycling and running, I'm doing hip and knee band exercises. And you can see my video on the rotator cuff of the hip, why I do those exercises, and learn more about that routine. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, in addition to my running and cycling, I'm going to be doing upper body exercises and core abdominal exercises. I also have a video on core abdominal exercises on this site, which you can check out. On Wednesday, in addition to that 8-kilometer run I'm doing right now, I do functional lower body exercises using free weights like dumbbells. I'll do lunges, squats, calf raises, deadlifts. And finally, on Thursdays and Sundays, in addition to swimming, cycling, and my long run on Sundays, that's when I do my foot core exercises and yoga. And again, I do those in bare feet. I have a video which goes over my warrior poses that I generally do for my yoga routine, so they're standing poses. On Thursdays, after I complete my swim and bike ride, and on Sundays, again, after my long run, I work on that yoga routine and this foot core exercise program that I'm about to show you now. Okay, so we're going to start with foot warm-ups. I do these foot warm-ups before I do my long run, especially on Sundays, but I actually do these foot warm-ups pretty much every day. I find that by loosening up the fascia on the bottom of my feet is also really kind of giving those muscles and the 4 layers of muscles a bit of a deep stretch with these warm-ups, that I'm able to run a little bit more efficiently, and I find I just have less discomfort overall in my legs. So I do these warm-ups first before, for example, again, as I was saying, my long run, and then usually later that afternoon, I'll do the foot core exercises, which, as you've seen on my schedule, I do these dedicated foot exercises that you'll see after the warm-ups twice a week. So if you're ready to have a look at these foot warm-ups, let's get those shoes and socks off and let's get to it. I start by rolling the bottom of my feet using my roller that you see here. You could also use a golf ball or a different type of roller, but the idea is to put some pressure on your plantar fascia and press into the layers of the foot muscles. I press just hard enough to feel that there is some pressure underneath my foot, and I roll from about my heel bone, the calcaneus, to the balls of the feet. And I do this back and forth at about this pace and in a standing position for about 2 to 3 minutes on each foot. This next exercise for my warm-up is a stretch for your plantar fascia, as well as a stretch for the intrinsics and even extrinsics of the bottom of your feet, so some of the longer muscles as well. With this stretch, do this very gently and very carefully. It's very easy because you're going to be sitting back on your heels. As you see, I've got my toes tucked underneath me, and as you sit back, it adds quite a significant stretch to that soft tissue, the fascia, as well as the muscles of your feet. So just be quite careful. I find quite often it's actually beneficial, particularly when you're starting out, is to put some kind of a pillow or a bolster, as I'm using my yoga bolster here, underneath, and then I just gently sit back. Again, my toes, as you can see here, are tucked underneath me. So I put this pillow underneath, and I'm just going to gently sit back on it, and just enough to feel a stretch. So once I get into position, very lightly feel a stretch. And at first you might notice that you feel a little bit of tension in your big toe, or you might notice it in some of your other toes, or maybe it's in the plantar fascia. Just notice it and make sure, again, it's not too intense, not too painful, and you want to hold this for about 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, I come out, release the pressure, and I'll just take my toes and straighten them back out. And then I'll do another set of those again for 30 seconds. So tucking underneath and then sitting back, holding that stretch for 30 seconds more.
Okay, the next thing is toe yoga. I have Siri here seated in a seated position. I'm going to get her to raise her big toe only while she keeps her other 4 toes down. And back down, and again, and back down. I'd recommend doing this approximately 10 times. For some people, you may find it helpful at first to hold your other 4 toes down while you raise your big toe. The next part of this toe yoga is to keep the big toe down while you raise your other 4 toes. Good, and repeat this 10 times. Once again, some people may need some help holding the big toe down to raise the other 4 toes. Finally, for toe yoga, see if you can spread your toes apart and then back together. Spreading apart and back together. You'll find that for most people, this is a challenging exercise. Don't be discouraged if you can't spread them at first. Sometimes it's just the thought or the idea. Keep practicing. The final warm-up is arch doming. For this final warm-up, you're going to again do this as with toe yoga in the seated position. With your one foot on the ground, what you're going to do is attempt to raise the arch of your foot by contracting the small muscles in the bottom of your foot that would normally flex your toes. But you're attempting to do this very small movement without scrunching your toes. It's a very subtle motion of raising the arch, keeping your heel down and your 5 toes down while you just imperceptibly almost try to raise the arch through contraction of the toe muscles. Once again, I do this for 10 repetitions. Now that we've completed the foot warm-up exercises, we're about to jump into the core foot strengthening exercises. These 5 exercises are all done in the standing position and of course done in barefoot. I do these exercises, as you've seen before from my schedule, I do them twice a week. The first of the core foot exercises is standing balance on one foot. Now, standing on one foot normally might not seem like that difficult or challenging of an exercise, but what we're going to do to really engage the muscles of the arch of the foot or the foot intrinsics is I'm going to have you raise up your heel about an inch off the ground and then practice balancing that way. When you first start, you're going to find that your balance isn't that great, generally speaking. So what I like to use are ski poles. These are in fact walking poles. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just enough pressure through these poles to try to get my heel off the ground, one heel, for 30 seconds. With this, notice where you feel it. If you feel it in your arch, that's a good sign that your arch muscles need strengthening. Maybe you feel it in your calf. Maybe you even feel it all the way up to your glutes. The idea is with practice that the sensation does move from perhaps initially in the foot up into the glutes. So here's how it works. Again, I'm standing with my poles for balance. And for me, I'm going to be doing this demo on my right foot, but you'll of course do it on both feet. And it's a 30-second hold for 3 sets. So here I come up, raising up off 1 inch, and just having enough balance with my poles to just support myself. And then you'd come back down 2 more times and then move to the other foot. For the second core foot exercise, what we're going to do is, once again, I have my same ski poles. And as I said before, you might be using a countertop for balance or something else to provide you with a little bit more support. But with these ski poles or walking poles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself up onto 1 foot. I'm switching to my left foot for my demonstration this time. Again, 1 inch off the ground.
And with your other foot, we're going to add a dynamic challenge, and we're going to make a running motion. So I'm literally just taking my foot forward, my hip and knee forward, and then making a circle motion as I, again, kind of emulate the running stride while I keep up on that left foot with that heel about an inch off the ground. I'll do, again, 30 repetitions on this foot. And I'm paying attention to where do I feel that? Do I feel that in my arch? Do I feel it in my calf muscle? And then after 30 repetitions, that foot comes down. I would do 2 more sets on that side before switching to the other side. The third of the core foot strengthening exercises looks a little bit like my hip core strength exercise program that I do with my band. So what we're going to do, I'm going to switch for demonstration purposes to my right foot this time. I'm going to use my poles again for balance, but once again, you could be using a countertop or something more stable if you like. I'm going to put just enough pressure on my poles to get my heel up about 1 inch off the ground. And what I'm doing for my dynamic challenge this time is I'm adding abduction and adduction. So that's abduction, taking your leg away, and adduction, bringing it towards, as I, again, have my right heel, in this case, 1 inch off the ground. Once again, I'll do 30 repetitions for the first set. Then I'll stop, come back down, do another 2 sets before switching to the other side. For the fourth core foot exercise, what we're going to do is, it looks very similar to start. You get in that same position. I'm going to be doing this demo on my left foot, once again using my poles. And this time we're going to add, though, a rotation. So we've done the running stride, we've done leg side to side, and now we're going to add a twist. It's very important that you are aware that the potential for causing potential harm to your knee and your hip is much higher with this exercise. If you have any history of a meniscal or cartilage damage to your knee or your hip, I'd recommend not doing this exercise. If you don't know of any reason why you can't do this for your hip or knee, then it's a great challenge for your core foot because you're going to be adding a dynamic twist. Once again, you're going to be using the poles, or I'm using the poles. You could use, again, a countertop. I'm going to demonstrate this on my right foot. As I come up, my heel comes up about 1 inch off. And what I'm going to be doing with this one is I'm literally just twisting twisting one way and then twisting the other. So I'm twisting in and then I'm twisting out. And just really paying attention to where I'm feeling that and noticing that most of this rotation is actually happening in my hip. However, there is going to be some rotation occurring in my knee as well, and it's quite a significant challenge to the arch of my foot as well. So it's a great challenge for the core muscles of the foot. You just have to be very careful if you have any history of knee pain or hip pain. And if while you're doing this you have any sensations in the hip and knee at all, stop doing this, and this exercise is maybe not for you. Then I would switch to do 2 sets. So take a rest, do 2 more sets, and then switch to the other leg. The fifth and final of the core foot exercises, again, I do this twice a week. The setup looks the same to begin with. Obviously, I've got my walking poles. You can use ski poles or something more stable if you prefer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate this one on my right foot. And I'm going to come up, again, same position, heels about 1 inch off the ground. So I've really activated my gastrocnemius soleus, but also the arch muscles of my foot. Now this one's much more dynamic. As I come up into that position, that starting position, 1 inch off the ground, I'm going to add a hop. And the way I'm going to hop, I'm just going to come down for a second, is I'm going to hop forward about 12 inches, to the left about 10 to 12 inches, back 12 inches, and then to the right. So essentially I'm going to create a square. I'll do that one time that direction, and then I'll go the other direction. And I'll do that for a total of 4 repetitions. Then I'll take a rest, and I'll repeat that on the other foot. So basically I'm going around the box 2 times one direction, 2 times the other, and then switching to the other foot. So this is what it looks like. Coming up onto my heel, taking some balance, and I'm going to go forward, left, back, right. Once I've completed that, come up on my heel, left, forward, right, back. And again, I would do that for a total of 4 times, 2 times to the left, 2 times to the right, then switch sides. It's a really challenging exercise. You really will notice that activates your arch muscles tremendously and really activates also your quadriceps, gastroc, soleus. A really great exercise. Is actually really one of my favorite. I really shouldn't say I have a favorite of the 5, but I think that one might be it. It's a challenging one, and yeah, let's leave you with that, and good luck with your foot core strengthening exercises. Send me a message if you have any questions. Okay, so that's it for my core foot strength exercises and my warm-ups. If you're just beginning to add core foot strength exercises to your routine, please go very easy at first and really listen to your body. Of course, you should not experience any pain anywhere while doing these exercises. Start with as much support as you need to do the exercises to complete just the 5 exercises without much of a challenge. Maybe it's both hands on a counter, for example. You can always increase the challenge later on. As you get stronger and your foot muscles get stronger, you could go to ski poles, 1 ski pole, or none at all. You want to risk irritating the muscles of your foot and tearing your plantar fascia, which is a definite risk. If you don't do these exercises slowly, mindfully, and pay attention to the movements and sensations in your body, and again, in particular, in your foot. You can also increase your exercises, the core foot, by adding more sets and more repetitions. But again, just remember to progress this slowly. Just as a reminder, do your foot warm-up exercises, or I do them at least 5 times a week. But I only do those core foot strength exercises specifically twice a week. They're incorporated, as I've said, into my rest of my routine. Remember that developing a stronger foot can improve your running efficiency and decrease your risk of injuries, and may also help rehabilitating some of your injuries that you might have right now, particularly chronic injuries of the foot, the shins, the knees, and the hips. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learning about the small but very important core muscles of your feet. If you have enjoyed this, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel, where I have many other videos on subjects such as hip injuries, core of the neck, core of the abdomen, also yoga videos, and some meditation videos. Bye for now.